redemption process. And one could ask, what's the need to study this, to learn the sources, how the redemption is, what is the redemption? When God redeems the world, redeems Israel, it'll be. When it is, when God wants it, it'll happen. We don't have to know. What do we have to learn? But now we see in these times how relevant it is, how important it is, the need to study, to understand the ways of God, what's going on, what's taking place, to understand the stages, to know what God is doing, to help the nation stand and stay strong in the wake of, in the midst of all these horrendous tragedies that have befallen us. The need for that, we mentioned last week, to keep the spirit, to keep the emunah, to know that Hashem is bringing good to us and to the world. It's a bigger stage, a new development. And not to lose sight of that, because the momentary, the difficulties, the challenges, the tragedies, ferocities, it can bring someone that forgets the bigger picture. So we have to remember where we are in the study of what we're doing to understand like the vision of Rabbi Akiva at the end of the Gemara in Makot. And he sees the rabbis are walking and they see the jackals, the wolves coming out of the Holy of Holies. The temple is destroyed. Now the rabbis are crying, the holiest place where only the high priest goes in once a year, in the holy day, the holiest place. And now jackals, wolves destroyed. What a desecration. And Rabbi Akiva is laughing. All the others are crying and he laughs. He sees the difficulty. He says he rents his garments over the morning. It's painful, it's difficult, the loss of life and the tragedies. But with that, it doesn't contradict. And with that understanding that what's out of this, the bigger future, he sees already the third temple that comes out of the destruction of the second temple. He sees what grows out of this, what's taking place, this inner vision, beyond the moment. The moment is painful, and we mourn, and we're sad. But in spite of that, also the time of knowing the vision of Emunah, this perspective, it's not we're not connected to this world. We feel the world, we feel the tragedy, but we know where it's going, what is taking place, what is the birth. We mentioned a few times the Gemara in the Tractate of Tamid, page 32. Who is the wise? Ezu chacham ro'et hanolad. He that sees, who is the wise? He that sees what's growing, what's inside, what's taking place, what's developing here. He sees the baby that's coming out. There's birth pain, there's labor pains. And he doesn't just suffer, he feels the pain, but but he understands that the baby, a new birth, a new bigger form of life is about to give birth, to come to expression. And that's what's causing, because of the not preparedness and the not opening of the womb. So there are pains that force out, because it will come out. The baby, this new life, this new level, this new understanding, these new conceptions that our old preconceptions were locked into no longer are valid, no longer are true enough to keep us going. We have to get to a new stage. And unfortunately that comes, we saw last week, through difficulties and challenges that force out the new stage. And we're supposed to be those that have the emunah, those that the midwife or the doctor that knows to help the woman, to know, to give her the strength to know what's coming out, a new birth, a new life, a bigger picture, what's coming out of all this. It's not just pain for the sake of pain. It's there's a goal in this, there's a purpose, and to guide, how to relate to all that, how to guide and direct all this to the next stage, to alleviate the pains, to make the nation strong and be able to stand up, to know justification of what we're doing to get rid of this evil in the world. That it's not easy. The dilemmas, the moral dilemma, the world says we're not we have to be careful, citizens, civilians. Don't want to talk about that now, but we have to be sure of the justification, the certainty of getting rid of evil. The eradication of evil is the biggest morality, is the biggest justice, the biggest chesed, kindness to the world. It used to be pacifists, right? We don't want to go down to their level. They're murderers, they're rapists, or whatever. We don't want to go down to their level. We don't want to kill like they kill. Because if we go and kill, then we're just like them. So pacifists, right? Make love, not war in the old days. So, but what does that do? The man who puts down his sword in the name of peace, whatever, he's not a murderer. He doesn't want to be like them. He lets evil become rampant and spread and conquer the world. That's not merciful. The mercy is who knows how to get rid of the evil, to eradicate evil, not out of the same motivation, not because he's a beast. If you kill he that kills the murderer is not a murderer just like him. He's, again, is bringing good to the world, justice to the world, getting rid of the head of the serpent, of evil that is corrupting all of mankind. You say in English, no, if you show me your friends, I can tell you who you are. Right? So here I show me who your enemies are, I know who you are. Here we see the epitome of evil, these forces of evil, of the details are more and more coming out of what barbaric sadism isn't the word, even savagery. And Am Yisrael is right next to them and is in charge of the world to get rid of that, the epitome of evil, the absolute evil, against the epitome of the absolute good. And the world is waiting for us to do the job to get rid of that evil. And it's not an easy thing. It's not a pleasant thing. War isn't a pretty thing. But that's unfortunately the necessity in this world. When there's evil and bad in the world, then good. God put it next to us. Can you imagine here? He put upon us here, right next to our borders, is this, how do I say, this serpent's nest of all of his evil. Because we're in charge, and we're the ones who can and will and are able to do and must get rid of that evil from the world. And ultimately the world is waiting, even with their claims of morality, of like they did in Hiroshima and Nagasaki or Dresden, whatever. They bombed citizens, whatever. The Americans and the Al-Qaeda, they bombed cities. Here we don't want to do that. We're doing the minimum, trying to minimize, to avoid any civilian death, but not to let the evil continue hiding behind the civilians, etc. So it has to be done, this painful thing. We hate it. We hate doing it. We hate the fact that we have to, like a surgeon that has to, do a surgery on his father. He has to cut the flesh of his father, the blood, but he knows he's doing it to save him, to help him. So on one hand, he's full of pain. I hate doing this. I hate that I have to do this, disgusted by this. We don't get pleasure. The enemy we see, what the pleasure, the burning the babies, cutting off the heads, tying them, and then just lighting the house on fire while they're burning them alive. It's Am Yisrael, the minimum. In other words, if we didn't have to, we would love to, we'd prefer. But we also have this job obligation, as we'll see, to bring good to the world, to bring God's name to the world, to bring light and glory to the world. What's the word? Tzedek and justice. And now it's put up, we see the world is clearly the enemy of this ultimate, the absolute evil, and the absolute good has to deal with that. In Yeshayahu, chapter 52, it says, Ki ayin ba'ayin yiru b'shuv Hashem Tzion. Eye and an eye will see the returning of God returning to Zion. Rav Tzviuda, Rav Kook, the son of Rav Yitzchak Kook, used to say, what does it mean ayin ba'ayin? An eye in an eye. No, here it's ayin ba'ayin. In English they translate it, eye to eye? Well, right, in English, right, so there's a good translation. We would say seeing eye to eye. But it sounds like ayin ba'ayin, an eye in an eye. What's some grotesque, an eye in an eye? But like you said, in English, it's what we call like seeing eye to eye. In other words, how to line up the human eye, the subjective, the finite, the local, seeing the moment, the external, to line up our eye to rise up to the eye, the divine eye. Rav Kook used to explain. To line up the ayin, the enushit, the human eye, to see the bigger picture. And then you'll see the returning of God to Zion. Other people don't see what's going on, don't see the process, don't see the baby that's growing here, developing. They see the problems, the moment, the day-to-day. We have to uplift our vision to see what is taking place. And that is what we're learning and we've been studying for all these times, to develop that vision, this training of the eye to see beyond the moment, to see what we call the bigger picture. That's Rabbi Akiva vision. And then you can work with God in the process. You can avoid the pains, you can alleviate those pains by bringing the nation to the next stage, to understanding of who it is, what we are, what's taking place. It doesn't have to be forced upon us that you're now, because of the tragedies, you have to now rethink your ways and on what's going on in your concepts. But we can bring the nation to the way, and what we're supposed to do is to work, what the rabbis say, polim imkel. Those who worked with God in the process will come and be blessed, whatever, to work with God in this process. Because he works, as we saw, through man. He can do miracles. There are miracles, there have been miracles, there will be miracles. But as we'll see, the redemption process is the way that God works in this higher system, mechanism, you could say, that he puts faith in man. He wants you to grow up, to do what mentioned in last week, I think, right? And we left Egypt. You're a baby, you can't do anything. It's all spoon-fed. He does miracles, he takes you out of Egypt, the water is split, everything is done by God. The wars at the beginning are all miraculous. And then all of a sudden God says, now I want to give you the child's growing up. You're supposed to do it. I'm giving you the powers. I mean, you had the powers, but now you're growing up and now you have to be independent and stand on your own 2 feet. Not that God left us. There's still the God guidance. But as we saw the Radak, if those who remember, that God brings the redemption, but he brings about through men, through human efforts, through human participation. And our process, they're the soldiers that are fighting, the leaders, but the people of Emunah, that we're supposed to be those that are the backbone, that give the energy, the strength, the certainty, the spiritual uplifting of knowing what is taking place here. Where are we going? What are we fighting for? It's not just self-defense. Literally for the eradication of evil from the world, from the face of the planet, for all of mankind, to bring the ultimate divine good, to get rid of these forces that are now erupting as the last stages in history of the redemption process, that try to hold up that good, try to hold up the nation of Israel, that our goal is to bring that divine ideal to this world, to live as a nation in the land of Israel, as a nation that not just philosophy talks about godliness and oneness and health and love and peace, but that lives it in the practical world, with a nation, with a government, with army, with politics, with agriculture and commerce and industry, and all that is holy. All that is driven by this holiness, the divine goodness, and to live that. So that for 2,000 years we didn't have that. In the exile, we had no nation, no government, no prophecy, no Sanhedrin, all the four national institutions, right? The kingdom, Jewish sovereignty, the temple, prophecy, and the Sanhedrin, the Jewish court. Those, as we'll see, we've seen the sources, that they don't exist. They can't exist outside of Israel. Those belong to the nation when we're a living nation in the land. So all of those vehicles in which God reveals his name, brings down the vehicles through which institutions, that the nation of Israel exhibits godliness on earth, not angels, human beings, a nation. Your goal is to be, right before the Ten Commandments, God says in Shemot chapter 19, you'll be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. A holy nation, not holy angels, monks, outside of this world in some monastery, living in some other island, and as if that's holiness. To be in this world, that's more difficult when there's enemies and there's problems and there's from within and from without. And all of that is driven by not barbaric instincts, animals, but out of holiness, out of goodness, for the good of all, for the sake of all. So that's what we're coming back to as this process of redemption, of bringing us back to life again, as this to be a kingdom of priests and holy nations. Not already right away. We mentioned there's stages where this process lasts 150 years or so, the returning. And there are forces that will try to hold up that process. The Antilight, the light gets stronger and stronger. The instinctive enemy, the darkness, feels that threat. And that's what we're up again now. Again, not just a little thing, but we see now how the depth of this evil, not just people that are evil have corruption. Everyone has, let's say, a bad side, but it was planned to the details of how to murder, how to take out, how to kidnap, how to take out children, how to try to make Am Yisrael lose its fortitude.
The fire has also spread to Europe and to America. I mean, the protests now.
Can. It'll be a world thing, because it's not. In Iran and America, it's who knows what's in store for us. But we know that, again, God is bringing another stage, a bigger stage, and according to, like we mentioned last week, right, Rav Kook writes, how the Midrash that says the redemption, the Redeemer is like the Gazelle in the Song of Songs, like we mentioned last week, the Gazelle, the mountain lion, not the mountain deer, whatever, that is revealed and then it's hidden, revealed. It goes behind some rocks or a valley, and then it's hidden and revealed. So too the Mashiach is hidden and revealed, Like there's an expression, it seems to be, things are starting to go, Balfour Declaration, Jews are coming back, and then a Holocaust, and then this, all the different stages that seem to be regressions and aliyot and yuridot, ups and downs. But even when the Gazelle is hidden, it's still climbing, it's still getting farther. All of a sudden, it's hidden from our eyesight, but all of a sudden we see it later. It advanced even to a higher peak. In other words, the process goes on even when it seems as if there's a regression. It seems as if maybe things aren't the way we thought this is redemption. We thought Jews are coming back, we have an independent state. And here, a tragedy that has never been since the Holocaust. But all of these things are part of this process, of part of the ups and downs. And we mentioned Rav Kook's letter after the riots, the murders, the unbelievable also, the massacres in Tafresh Beitet, 1929, in Hebron, in Motzah, in Yerushalayim, in Tzfat. And he says, according to the measure of the kisui, the hiddenness, the concealment, so too the measure of the revelation that comes afterwards. And that we said is a principle in all of Torah and all of the guidance of God in the world, what the Maral calls heder kodem havaya, the absence that precedes existence. The negative, the collapse of the previous, which precedes but also facilitates, forces out the next stage, the new advanced stage. It's not just you go back to where you were. It's like a spring that you pull a bow and arrow, and it doesn't just go back to the middle. It goes back, the further you pull it back, it even farther the arrow goes. We mentioned that's not to the topic now. A little bit last week we started to mention. how this divine working of the world to bring man to its ultimate perfection. He can do it himself. He can do miracles. Everyone sees the truth, recognizes it. But God works it through man, through the historical developments and the ups and downs and the challenges that force out. We mentioned necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity is the mother of advance. That forces you certain things and crises and different things that cause out the birth. They force out the baby, facilitate the birth, and bring it out to a higher stage. The rabbis say on the basuk, my enemies in Micha, my enemies don't be happy with me or about my downfall because kinafalti kamti, I fell and I will get up. So the rabbis say, lule nafalti lo kamti. The Midrash says, if I didn't fall, I wouldn't get up. So Rav Drukman used to ask him, what do you mean if I didn't fall, I wouldn't get up? If I hadn't fallen, I wouldn't need to get up. I'd remain standing. In other words, don't see me when I'm falling. Don't be happy because I'm going to get up. And the rabbis say, if I didn't fall, I wouldn't get up. If you wouldn't fall, you wouldn't need to get up. He goes, no, when you get up again, it's not to come back to where you were, to get to a new stage, a higher stage, without that falling. The rabbis say there, mitoch tzara, from darkness to light, from pain to redemption. From the negative things, unfortunately, that's one of the ways of God pushing the world to advance, to grow, to mankind to understand his mission in the world and purpose and the grander understanding, is through these challenges. The challenges make you stronger, challenges make you grow. And so the rabbis say, if I didn't fall, had I not fallen, I wouldn't get to this new stage. I would remain standing and standing. How do you say, static. But this dynamic method of growth, of pulling back, of seemingly falling, in order that pushes you to an even further stage. And that's what we're learning about, understanding this process is not a simple one. As we see today, it's not a simple thing to keep your head above water amidst all these problems. And that's what our job is. And that's what I said, all this study that we're doing is to prepare to be that vision of Rabbi Akiva, the vision of Emunah, to see beyond the moment. Moshe Rabbeinu had that question. At the end of the Parsha of Shemot, Moshe was sent to Paro to save the nation, to tell them we were going to redemption. And what's the word? Shlachet ami, send my nation. What happens? Paro, how does he respond? He sends him, everything is good.
He makes it worse.
Even worse. You have time to talk about redemption. I see you guys need to be more preoccupied with more suffering, more, you don't get the weave, whatever, to make the bricks. I'll make you more work. You don't have time to think about being freedom and whatever. So things get worse. Moshe comes at the end of Parshat Shemot. It ends up with this. We're left hanging to the next week. Moshe says, Lama harayotel la'am hazeh. In English, in chapter 6, God and Moshe returned to God and said, why have you dealt ill with this people? Lama harayotel, why have you made things worse? Why did you send me? For since I came to Paro to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people. Not only has not delivered them, but he made it even worse than it was before. So in other words, Moshe Rabbeinu, let's say, understood that the process is stages. It's not all at once. There'll be stages, developmental process of redemption, as we learned and we studied. But there's regressions. The things are going backwards. That doesn't fit. It doesn't seem to make sense. You were going the wrong way. We mentioned when you build a building, a skyscraper, you dig down and down and down. It's the wrong direction. You're supposed to be building up, and you're now. So if you're building a small building, you can put it on top, a story, second, third story on top of an old building. You want to build a skyscraper, you have to dig down, and the foundation's the depth. And according to the depth of the foundations, in the wrong direction, you understand what great building is about to be built that requires such deep foundations. So if you understand this vision of understanding the process of what seems to be regressions, like I said, it seems that the mountain lion or the mountain goat or whatever is hidden, the tzvi, the gazelle. It's not hidden, it's continuously advancing. If it's not in front of your sight, sometimes you don't see, you don't understand how, but the process is going on. And even the negative is part to enhance the good, to bring out a bigger good, a bigger stage, a new advanced stage. If I didn't fall, I wouldn't get up. I wouldn't get up to this new higher dimension. I would stay put in the low thing, all the simple understanding, but you can't stay a baby, you can't stay a child. God wants us to grow up, to be what we're full human faculties with all our senses, with all our powers, all our intellect, all the emotions, and all of that to be at a higher level of goodness, of holiness, all to serve the ultimate goal of what we're here for, to bring good to the world. And that's what Am Yisrael as a nation is coming to do. And now it's coming to a front, like I said. Like you said, the world is maybe being divided now the pro-evil and the pro-good, the light against evil and darkness. So that's what we saw up till now. For those who remember the sources, we discussed the, I'm not going to go back to the beginning again. We saw from the beginning of the redemption can come in two ways, right? The Rabbi said, Bi'itach Yishena, I'll bring it, I'll hasten it in its time. The Rabbi said it can come hastened. You can hasten the redemption. You can bring it quicker, swifter, majestically, beautifully, without any problems. Or there's a process of it comes in its time. There's a deadline date past which the world, God doesn't let us, the woman not give birth. She doesn't want to give birth. She's holding other women's clothes. But there'll be a time when it has to be. All of creation was created just to reach that point, to get to the point of perfection, of elevation of all of existence. All that's created is for that goal, even that which seems to be against. The Ramchal elaborates on it in Derech Hashem, mainly in Dat Funot, it's in English, what's it called in English? The knowing heart of the function of evil in the world. How could there be evil? God is good. How can there be evil in the world? But yes, there's a function of evil that, like I said, forces the good to be even better, to be stronger, to be revealed that it's not just a good that's in a corner, but a good that deals with this world and elevates it, all of creation, all of the that you thought was against turns out to be part of the process. These are deeper things of the function of evil, the temporary function of evil. Good is the absolute, is the eternal. Evil is a temporary mechanism to push, to enhance, to force out, to help you grow, a catalyst. But that's not the goal. The goal of creation is this absolute good that God has in store for the world, for which He created the world, that all is leading to that. And our goal is to keep sight of that, to know how in the difficulties, in the challenges, in the suffering, God forbid, unfortunately, but not to lose sight of. Again, we mourn, like I said, we feel the pain. But it's with that, it doesn't contradict. With that, at the same time, the intellectual understanding, the spiritual, the emunah, the faith of knowing the good that comes out of this. He is the wise that sees the nolad, sees what is growing inside and pushing and where it's leading to. So then we saw the different, there's the options. The rabbis defined it as the miraculous redemption and the natural redemption. It can come through miracles, God does it all. And it can come through the natural that we participate. And we saw how there were those that were expecting, and maybe you could say the dominant opinion in the exile became the suffering was so great, and just God bring us back, save us tomorrow, the redemption can come. People that believed. But the rabbi said it is wrong to believe that redemption will come as a sudden revelation of God from heaven, calling His people to leave the diaspora. In other words, there was an expectation of the miraculous. We're waiting for the miracles. God, we believe in you. You can do anything. You can bring us back tomorrow all at once. Splitting of the Atlantic, whatever, and we'll fly on the magic wings of eagles to Eretz Yisrael. And it is we said that's one of the ways. Redemption come in a miraculous way. But the natural way became more of, and we discussed why, different reasons of why maybe the predominant expectation was sit back passively. God will bring redemption when He deems fit, when it's time to come back, when He wants us to come back, and not to you to participate, to go, to do. And we see the false Mashiachs, when they try to do, you see that it's wrong, you just wait, sit back and wait. Passivity. In other words, okay. But again, why? Because we mentioned the two different basic reasons of why, not because they didn't believe that God works through that, but we mentioned the difficulties, the tragedies, that the dream was so far away from the real, the ideal, that the expectation became only that only you can save us, only you can get us out of this, that we can go back on a natural means, that there'll be boats and planes and Balfour Declaration. It was, again, now we're so after the fact, it seems obviously it took place through human, so to speak, efforts. But
the natural redemption? It's supposed to be...
The natural is that when you participate, that humans, the world functions in normal ways, and nothing out of so to speak, out of the ordinary laws of nature. But God's will is I'll bring this one more source. So we saw also of Gutmacher, to our great misfortune, there are many that mistakenly believe that they will sit in the comfort of their homes when suddenly a voice from heaven will proclaim redemption. But it will not be so. We have to do our efforts and our participation. We mentioned different reasons of why that became, also the lack of study. The redemption was something, it'll come when God wants it, He'll bring it. Meanwhile, you have to be a good Jew, which is true. You have to keep the mitzvah, keep Shabbat, put on tefillin. And God will bring the redemption when He wants. To go, to build the land, first of all, it was impossible. We mentioned learned helplessness. For 2,000 years, it was almost impossible to participate, to do anything to facilitate the process. So we got used to, right, learned helplessness, and any psychologist here, whatever. Martin Seligman, this understanding of psychology that when you can't do for so long, you became learn to help. You become helpless. You don't even try anymore because no, that's what it's called. Learning helplessness. You can look it up on the internet, whatever. They did thing on the dogs that they every time they tried to get some food, they had to climb over things. They get a shock. So they stop trying even. They're hungry, yet the food is right there. But no, once they're so trained, they're trained to be helpless. In other words, they become passive. We mentioned in the Holocaust, even in a short amount of time, what happened to the Jews. There became this Sobibor. If you saw the movie or the book about Sobibor, the revolution, and most of them just sit put. There's a few people that tried to organize this revolt. They shot a few guards, whatever. They'd run. You have the gates are open for only, we don't have much time till the guards come back or whatever. Run, and the people just stood there because they were so trained they couldn't move until you get the order to move. And not over thousands of years. Here, 2,000 years, the nation was trained that we couldn't do anything to bring the redemption. Only just pray and believe in God and hope and be religious and do the mitzvot, then God will bring the redemption. So that becomes so inculcated. Yourself so helpless, so to speak. This what we mentioned there at Ibn Ezra, way before the Martin Seligman in the 60s. Ibn Ezra writes how the slave mentality, the galut mentality, the Jews who were in the exile, those that left Egypt, he says, well, why didn't they fight when the Egyptians chased after them? It says they were afraid. The Jews, 600,000 men, women and children, over 2 million, and a few 100 chariots of the Egyptians came and chased them, and the Jews were shocked and then couldn't move. They were in fear. The Rebbe says, why were they in fear? You outnumber them. 50, you could jump on them and just attack them. He says, these people were slaves to Egypt. There was the master race and then the slaves. The slaves don't think of maybe 50 of us, one of them, we can jump over. It doesn't even dawn on them. It's a mentality. It's not a matter of intellectual statistics or strategy. They were born slaves, he said. The slave mentality is thus that he was trained, that you can't even try. You don't even think of trying to overcome. So too, these people that were so used to see the Egyptians, and they fell back to their old mantra of we're the slave, we can't move. Here they are, the masters, and we're the slaves again. We can't attack them. Until a new generation would rise up. He said God worked it out that the spies, etc., 40 years in the desert, a new generation would rise up that never saw slavery, that never saw exile, shalora ugalut, and they had a higher soul, a new mentality. It's a mentality, it's not a matter of sources, just learning and saying. It's the mentality of understanding, of perspective that doesn't change. You just throw them 20 sources that redemption come in a natural way. But after 2,000 years of this learned helplessness, of this galut mentality, of this passivity, if you want to see a book that talks about it a lot, also a living evidence, so to speak, Rav Tachtal, Hashem Yikom Damo, Rav Tachtal, that was killed in the Holocaust, the book Eim HaBanim Smecha. I believe you used to have a few copies. So Eim HaBanim Smecha was a great rabbi, Talmid Chacham, that during the Holocaust, hiding out in Budapest without books, and he says he realized he's rethinking the whole question of what's going on and with what Hashem is doing in the nation and the world, the Jewish people being massacred, and he says, conclusion, we have to go to Eretz Yisrael, we have to participate and bring the redemption. But he goes, I also will mention my sin, that I also thought, without any questioning, that we have to wait for Mashiach, we have to wait for redemption, we have to wait for miracles. What does it mean that God will do? Miracles, he says, we were taught, we have to wait for miracles, God will bring us back when he deems fit. And it's not only you can't, but you're not allowed to. Right? Even got to the point you're not allowed to participate, because that's like, well, you don't believe in God, and he can bring you out of the exile. He needs you to bring him out. In other words, that shows a deficiency of a lacking of emunah, of faith in God, that as if you're saying that he can't bring you out. He needs you to help.
He doesn't need to be. He wants it.
So that's what he writes in the book. That's how his perspective was. He was raised and thought, and where did you say it was? I don't want to start with this because it would definitely not even get on. But he has this paragraph called, on the side, they put the notes, the author's confession.
Everything in his head, Talmud, and all those.
Okay, and all these things were off the source. That's the whole book. It's just only sources, and this is all by memory. He says, I must confess the truth and declare my sin. I too despise the rebuilding of the land. Right? Anti-Zionism. Zionism is idol worshiping. What do you mean, Jews taking up into their hands the history of you have to wait for God. God will do. Because I heard unqualified statements made by many Orthodox Jews, which became firmly implanted in my heart. I did not concern myself with this matter at all, of how the redemption will be. I didn't learn in Machon Meir of how the redemption, what the stages, what the Torah talks about, how God works in history. I was teaching, learning, teaching, and writing volumes of Talmud and commentaries, responsive literature. He was a big rabbi. You have his books. I only delved into this halakha, this question of how God runs the world, so to speak, this redemption, after we suffered affliction in this exile. Hashem enlightened me, and I saw that I and all those who opposed this movement were mistaken. I admit that I say that all that I told you was wrong, etc. And he talks about very strong words of the.
This book was a secret. This book was so controversial that
Well, first of all, not secret. In New York, I heard that they confiscated all the copies of that were printed. It was printed in 1943. Right, he saw he has even notes, so to speak, on how it was printed during the Holocaust. It's amazing. I think the original edition in 1943 in Budapest. So you read the introduction when he wrote, how he wrote, how he didn't make it out, but he says these zealots that were the hatred against Zionism that said to all the Orthodox Jews that if you're a Zionist, you're an abhorrence, you're an abomination. Anyone that said you're a Zionist, you believe, we want to go to Eretz Israel or pro the movement of the Jews coming back to Israel, you were labeled as someone that was not religious, an idol worshiper, because that's. So, but he says what I'm bringing down this one point here of they spread the hatred, enmity throughout the Orthodox world against this group which devoted itself to building the land, like they were trapped in the sin of the spies that came out, the rabbis, 10 out of the 12, the majority of the rabbis that were against it said, no, let's not go to Israel, we can't go to, etc., etc., all the different reasoning he explains. Today's spies today bring us to this present situation which we horror after horror, weeping after weeping. And all of this is because we despise the cherished land, the desirable land, as I will show later. But he says they had this position called, and there's halachic terminology, but he calls they stood on the secular people are getting up and moving. They don't listen to the rabbis. They're getting up and moving and building and wanting to dedicate themselves to the land. And the religious stood on their side, refraining from sharing in this work. They stood by their age-old claim, it is preferable to sit and do nothing. It's a halachic term of shev al taseh. When you're in doubt, sit back and do nothing. But here they took it as a principle, so to speak, of, like you said, passivity of waiting. God will bring it about. Meanwhile, the other people, the secular, are going and building the land, made continue and prosper, he says, blesses them. While the Orthodox, the religious, are standing on the side. He says, those who prepare on Shabbat will eat on Shabbat. It's also a principle. Those who prepared and built. Later you complain. The secular, that don't listen to the rabbis had to say there, they have this of going back. God is waking them up to come back to the land. The religious, some of them, said, no, we have to wait. It's this inner drive that God is waking up in the Jewish people to bring us back. On the other hand, the teachings that they were taught, the direction was sit back and wait. We have to wait. We have to wait for God. So to go or not to go. So many of them claim that we have to sit back and wait, like these rabbis tell them not to. But it is wrong to think that God will bring you, etc., by miracles. But nevertheless, so they sat back. And then the secular, don't listen to rabbis, went with this spirit and came back to the land of Israel. And then the religious claim that, but it's a secular state. We can't go to Israel. We're anti, because it comes, not really, because who are the ones that built it? The ones who didn't. In other words, you didn't participate, and you complain later that the secular built it on a secular foundation. And he says, those who, he said, don't complain later. He brings the Ger Rebbe who writes, don't complain later. Those who toil and build have the influence. And he says, I don't know if the religious will be able to vindicate themselves before the heavenly court for not participating in the movement to rebuild the land and for not heeding the calls of the tzaddikim, the rabbis, of Kalisher, of Gutmacher, of Molav, the Gaon, all these rabbis that said to go and to build and to come. Anyway, but the Ger Rebbe also, he brings back later, how he says that don't complain. We didn't, if you had millions have come, had the religious come, it would be a different state of Israel. It will be what it's supposed to be. But now it's more of a difficult process, and that's where we come in again, to understand all this, to help guide and lead it. It's not perfect right away. So what do? So we said, this isn't it what we're waiting for. This isn't redemption. We prayed for a religious holy kingdom, the kingdom of priests and holy nation. That's not what we have today. So on the...
I saw a video yesterday, 2 days ago, of this tragedy, this atrocity. It's a big effect on the Haredim too. I saw pictures of Hasidim, everybody in the Shtreimel, in a secular wedding, like just like to give
They can. They're giving food. There's a picture there. It said someone saw they're hugging together. They're bringing them food, helping out 2,000 volunteers. They said to join the army to do something to participate. There's an awakening. There's an awakening. Again, this process isn't stam. But again, like I said, they had this perspective. It's all or nothing. What is the miraculous? It's all or nothing. If God does it as an opening up of the gates of heaven, you see it all. So it's all or nothing. It's all perfect, or it hasn't taken place. The natural process is a developmental process, as the Maral explained. It takes stage by stage. It grows and develops more and more, as we saw the source before that, the redemption that comes in stages. He talks about how the nature is that which is the function of time that goes in the realm of time. The miraculous is no time. It's like the curtain goes up and you see the full goal. So those that look at the state of Israel today, or the last 100 years or so, this isn't what we waited for. It's not all. This isn't the perfect holy kingdom of Israel that we're bringing God's name to the world. It's not living according to the Torah, and the Beit HaMikdash isn't here. So if it's not all, therefore it's nothing. But that's if you have this perspective that these rabbis are saying. It is wrong to think that redemption will come to the sudden revelation. It's a process, it's stages. But if you're waiting for that, then you are disappointed and dismayed, and therefore reject this baby that is not yet a rabbi. Right? You were promised a rabbi, a scholar, a prophet, and here the baby grows and he can't even read. It takes the books and starts ripping the pages. But if you understand what we're trying to learn, what the rabbis teach us, at the last we saw before that, before the break of the Yerushalmi, the redemption comes in stages, slowly, including the regressions. And so the Vilna Gaon and the Netziv, and there are all the rabbis that talked about how these stages of redemption, that's what we're going to get to soon, the biblical story. I wanted to get to the Tanakh, to get back to the topic of what we started 3 months ago, of how the Tanakh, how the Torah teaches us how to understand what is taking place, how to see, and that's what our goal is, to recognize the hand of God, the workings of God, the unfolding of this divine ideal of all of history, and to be those that can help guide it and bring it. To be frustrated, to be upset, to be despair, that's easy. The face of what's going on, you can lose sight. But our goal is what God wants and commands us. We're supposed to learn Torah, to be those that, we saw last week, this Rav Kook, to keep the spirit, and not just to be optimistic, so to speak, but to see, to be aware of how from these things come out a bigger good. If I didn't fall, I wouldn't get up to even a bigger stage, a higher stage, higher advanced development that we're ready for now. And to help that, to bring that out. What is our goal in the world? Not just, again, self-defense. If there's an enemy killing us, obviously we're justified to get rid of the enemy. But it's more than that. Now we have to come to the awareness of what we're living for, what our purpose of being, and not just to stay alive. Alive for what? We have a purpose, a goal, a universal blessing to bring to all of mankind, all of existence. And we have to be aware of that. So that's our goal, to study, to learn, to be partners in that, to facilitate, to bring about redemption, and hopefully in these final stages soon, to be culminated in our days.